Hi everyone, welcome to FarreeMakes. Today we're going to be making delicious, fluffy, really beautiful bakes. So stay tuned, I'm going to show you how to make it. Oh yeah, that looks good. So first we're going to start off with some yeast, butter, baking powder, all-purpose flour, sea salt, and sugar. In a bowl, we're going to prepare our yeast. So I have 1 packet of fast-acting yeast, and you just follow the instructions to bloom the yeast. So I'm just adding some sugar here and some warm water. We're going to stir that up really well and make sure that the yeast and sugar are dissolved. And once you have a good enough mix, then I'm just going to cover that up with a lid. And just to trap that heat in even more, I'm going to cover it with a kitchen towel. You can use a tea towel, whatever you see. Okay, so after letting it bloom for 10 minutes, this is what we have. So we got a little bit of action here, which is good. So we can start building our bakes. So first I'm going to start with my all-purpose flour, and the recipe calls for 2.5 cups of sifted all-purpose flour. So I'm just measuring out 2.5 cups here. And we're going to sift it just to give a little bit more air and make sure that there are no clumps or lumps when you're mixing up the dough. To that flour, I'm also going to add 2 teaspoons of baking powder. So traditionally, bakes are made with just the baking powder, but when I compared notes with my mother, she actually started doing some yeast with it, so that's why we added yeast. I'm just adding some salt to taste here, and to give it that nice buttery and flakiness, I am also going to do 2 tablespoons of butter. So you can use any butter of your choice. I like Kerigold, it adds a really nice flavor. And once you have all those in, you just get your hands in there and just start mixing this dough together. So you cannot over knead this dough. It's very forgiving in terms of, being able to withstand gluten and the build of gluten in there, so it's great. So you just really get it together, make sure you can kind of form a ball, and then based on, how the weather is and how things are, you may have to add a little extra flour just to make sure that the dough comes together. So in this case, I just put about 1/4 cup of flour, and then I'm just kneading that in. And I'm just going to kind of feel it out to see how the dough is. So when you get it to the texture kind of like of a Play-Doh, you can able to make a nice ball. It's nice and smooth. We're good to go. I'm going to cover that, seal it off with my kitchen towel, and we're going to let that proof. Okay, so our dough is proof, and now it's time to fry. So we're going to prepare our oil. I'm going to do a couple swigs of coconut oil, and I'm also going to add some grapeseed oil. So the coconut oil adds a nice flavor. The grapeseed oil just kind of fills up the pan a little bit more. And now we're going to start rolling out our dough. So this is it after about 30 minutes of proving or letting it rise. Just going to knock out a little bit of the air, kind of bring our dough together, and you can see how nice and light and airy it is. It's still really pliable, and it's risen a good amount. So now we're just going to shape off our dough. I'm going to take about, I'll say that's like a golf ball size, and you're going to roll it in, kind of like taking the ends and tucking it into the center, and then just rolling it really nicely, kind of creating that surface tension on the exterior of the dough, and then pressing it flat so that way it all cooks evenly. So I'm gonna just show this again, but in a slower motion. So I pull out a dough, I'm gonna roll it up, just get a nice ball shape, and then you're just pulling the exterior into the center, and you're just gonna create a nice smooth surface on the outside. And then you kind of get it nice and tucked in. Once you have a good enough tuck, you're just gonna roll it in the palm of your hand, just to create that nice smooth exterior, and then press it all flat. And that's your bake. See? Easy. Okay. So I just roll out a couple more. I'm gonna pinch off a piece of dough here, and this is how I'm going to test that my oil is ready. So it's been sitting on a medium-high heat, and I'm just gonna put that in there. It's not ready yet. You want it when you see it doing this, nice bubbles on the outside. So we're good to go. All right, so I have my pre-rolled dough here, and I'm just gonna put that in the oil just to get things started. And that foam that you see is just the baking powder kind of baking off into the oil, so don't worry about it, it's all fine. All right, I'm just gonna keep rolling out more dough, because once this starts, it just keeps going. You gotta have enough dough to keep up as you fry and take out from the oil. So I'm just gonna roll out enough and kind of get the rest of my dough set up. Okay, so this is my dough balls all ready to go. And this is the first batch that we have here. You can see they've puffed up quite nicely. That's the combination of the yeast and the baking powder that really make it nice and fluffy. So we're just flipping these over, and you can see a nice golden brown exterior, which is perfect. And because they're so light, the interior is going to be cooked by that first flip. So now it's time to remove from the oil, and we just continue baking off the rest of our dough balls. And you see you kind of have a system here as you go on. You have your first batch kind of off to the side cooking, and then when you do that first flip, they're good. You take that out, and you can start putting in your new batch of dough just to kind of have a nice assembly going on. So the idea is not to trouble it too much. Once you put the dough in, you just check it to make sure the bottom is kind of golden brown. If not, you can adjust the heat. But after you're done, look at this, guys. This is so beautiful, and it's nice and fluffy on the interior. The exterior has a nice crunch to it. Because we fried it in that coconut oil, it has that nice coconut flavor, which is very subtle, but this is so good. You can't eat one, so you know, you might want to double the recipe.